G'day, mate. So I was just listening to Jordan Peterson on Betrayal, and he talked about how we all behave according to social expectations, generally speaking. And I'm thinking that perhaps we also tend to behave according to family expectations, that often the different kids in the family have different roles. So, say the youngest might be the rebel, the middle child might be the quiet, overshadowed one, the eldest child may be the overly responsible one who takes on too much responsibility. Say the mother may be a bit mentally ill, so she can't be expected to take on normal motherly responsibilities. And then the father has his particular role. Anyway, whatever role we become used to playing in childhood, it may start to ripple through our lives. And this is also true in the workplace. Often you have the favorite son in the workplace, the goofball, class clown type character in the workplace, the irresponsible one, but who's amusing and fun. You have the overly responsible people in the workplace. You have those who just do the very minimum, but they're reliable. So anyway, according to Jordan Peterson, we have these expectations for how people should behave. And then when we get into intense relationships, such as romantic sexual ones, if people let us down, then that shatters our conceptions of reality. We start to question how accurately we're seeing reality. We start to question who we are. We question where we're going. We're questioning our life trajectory. We start questioning our ability to perceive other people's character, our ability to read others. So that feeling of betrayal, it shatters our expectations for how the world should work, how we operate, who we are, where we're going, where we've been, our ability to read other people. Then I was listening to Eckhart Tolle, author of The Power of Now. New York Times in 2008 called him the world's #1 spiritual teacher. He talked about betrayal, and he noted that saying, "I have been betrayed," is an incredibly heavy sentiment that will change your personality. Once you say, "I have been betrayed," you take on something very heavy. It changes your personality. Then you take that changed self into all your new relationships. I am betrayed. And he offered a reframe. Instead of saying, "I am betrayed," in this case, the question came from a woman, probably about a man who'd betrayed her. Instead of saying, "I've been betrayed," instead, we can say something like, "I was in a relationship with a human being who, at one particular moment, operated at a lower level of consciousness than what I expected." So already that's a much lighter way of framing things. You could just leave it at, "I was in a relationship with a human being. Good morning." So it's that often people are at a high level of consciousness, but then a particular combination of events or a certain situation will just absolutely throw them, and cause them to act in ways that just seem absolutely unfathomable. And other people completely predisposed to commit certain crimes and absolutely would do them in certain circumstances, and yet those circumstances never arise. And you can have men who operate at a very high level of consciousness, meaning with integrity in all aspects of their lives, but there are certain sexual temptations that come along, and then they completely lose their integrity. So I thought that was an interesting reframe on the question of betrayal. Instead of saying I was betrayed, which is a very heavy thing to take on, which will have ongoing repercussions, how you view yourself. And Starbucks this morning, completely empty behind me. There's nothing going on there. So pretty much all Starbucks are closed, I think, except for the drive-through windows. Alright, there's a question in the chat. Let me have a look here. Doubt the Alexander technique would approve of the face mark placement. When out and about and not needing its use, try strapping it above the elbow. Okay. See, Alexander technique is a technique that's quite flexible. So you may think it's bad Alexander technique placement because it may give me an incentive to tip my head back. But because I'm directing the back of my head straight up and my whole head forward and up, I'm not tipping my head back even though I've got the placement, as you can see. All right, here's the book, Betrayals, The Unpredictability of Human Relationships. Let me find the place here. Okay. Does the mask adversely affect the quality of the la-la-las? Okay. Bloody hell. Let me find the knowing and not knowing, being for oneself, being for the other, self-betrayal. Whoops. I'm completely losing it here. Okay, here we go. Alright, we're going to learn about living with betrayal. Whoops. Alright, we begin here with a paragraph from Robert Musil, The Perfecting of a Love. That's from the book. Alright. And in a flash of illumination, she saw her whole life dominated by this inexplicable, unremitting betrayal that one commits in every instant, by cutting loose from oneself without knowing why, nevertheless sensing in it an ultimate, inexhaustible tenderness far removed from conscious thought, tenderness through which one is more immediately linked with oneself than with any of one's actions. So in a flash of illumination, she saw her whole life dominated by this inexplicable, unremitting betrayal that one commits in every instant. So is that just talking about coming to peace with one's humanity? So, okay, Glib's got a comment. It still requires resistance to keep the spine loose, but when I'm out and about, it's often on a bicycle. Okay, so I got a comment there. It's often on a bicycle, I presume that you have these problems. Okay. It's often on the where constriction is even more pronounced. Okay, so I'll admit I've been having problems at times with my back going out. Happens about once a year. It's quite embarrassing for an Alexander technique teacher to have his back go out, and it's almost always after I've been biking a lot. I've got a stationary bike. So when I watch movies and TV, how did you get red-pilled? Doing street epistemology. So I think I got red-pilled reading Charles Murray's The Bell Curve. I think because that just made fall into place things that I think I'd always instinctively had a feel for. But when I read The Bell Curve, it's like, yeah, this is how the world works. So anyway, regarding biking, so on my stationary bike, I'd do a few miles every day, and then I'd often have lower back problems as a result. And so I was talking about this with Gadi Kaufman, who operates the website gadibody.com, GADIBODY.com. And he said if I'm leaning forward when I'm riding my bike, said, yeah, I'm usually leaning forward, kind of resting on the handlebars. He says that's causing me to constrict certain muscles, which then will pull my spine out of place. Okay, Luke, my back always goes out in the springtime. I just went through a bout of it. You notice any seasonal correspondence? And Glib says 2 stores that stayed open after lockdown here and then subsequently closed a few weeks later just reopened. Okay, so anyway, with biking, if you're leaning forward on the handlebars, you're most likely going to be constricting certain muscles that then pull on your spine and tug it out of place. So that's what was going on with me. So now when I ride my bike, I make sure that I'm sitting upright, and then all those problems have gone away. So if you're leaning forward on your bike, you're very likely going to shorten some muscles, and then muscles will tug on your spine and on your bones and pull them out of their ideal shape. So that is what happened to me. So when I let go of leaning forward on my bike and instead sat straight up, then those problems disappeared. Also, I tried sleeping on a wedge, and that helped me get better quality of sleep. It reduced my sleep apnea, but because the wedge was relatively short, it was only like 24 inches, then it was doing funky things to my lower back. So now I got a longer wedge. It's 42 inches, 6 inches at the top, so I sleep on a gradual incline. Okay, sitting upright like a Tweety English professor who's what actually compresses the spine. No, it only compresses the spine if you are tensing and compressing there through your unconscious habit patterns. If you are directing yourself up through your spine, you're not going to be compressing your spine. So, let's get back here to betrayal. So this notion that you see yourself, your unremitting betrayal that one commits in every instant, I think that refers to just, it's absolutely the worst bike riding position. Disavow. Well, people can try it and see the results. So, I'm talking stationary bike here. So biking out and about on the streets. I'm thinking, if you're completely leaning forward, it all depends on if you're causing certain muscles in your stomach area to shorten. Because if you cause muscles to shorten, they're going to pull on your spine and knock it out of shape. Hannah Arendt states in The Human Condition that action is unpredictable because it arises from the darkness of the human heart. Yeah. From the fact that every individual is unreliable because unable to guarantee today what will happen tomorrow, from our common inability to predict the consequences of an action within a community of equals in which all have a like capacity for action and freedom to act. Yeah, so someone may say something, and Glib says, it's important to remember that one is not sitting in a seat when riding a bike, one is straddling a saddle. I use lots of cushions on my saddle when I'm riding a bike. So usually I have 2 cushions, 2 big, large, comfy cushions, which reduce the pain that comes from sitting on a straddle. Okay, so what Hannah Arendt is talking about is that we all tend to act in relationship to other people, and that our actions are unpredictable in large part because we are dealing with other people and the stimuli that they give us. So, for example, this chat this morning, this live stream has gone in a little different direction than what I expected because of I am affected by the questions of other people. And that's a good thing, Right, that's the difference between solipsism and intersubjectivity. So solipsism means you only act and think with regard to yourself. The best saddles have very little cushion. Okay. All right. So I'm going to react to things said in the chat. I'm affected by other people. And so, to use Eckhart Tolle's language, I may be a man of high levels of consciousness in many areas of my life, but then I will encounter a particular stimulus and I'll just go nuts. So, intersubjectivity means we know who we are in relationship to other people. That who other people are and what they do affects us, and we are affected and changed by our relationships with others. So that's why there's so much betrayal, because we're constantly affected by others. All right. As Hannah Arendt puts it, man's inability to rely upon himself or to have complete faith in himself is the price human beings pay for freedom, and the impossibility of remaining unique masters of what they do, of knowing its consequences and relying upon the future, is the price they pay for plurality and reality, for the joy of inhabiting together with others a world whose reality is guaranteed for each by the presence of all. Okay, so yeah, we cannot completely rely upon ourselves because who we are is affected by other people. And as other people act, we are in turn affected and changed. So the price of having other people in our lives is that we are continually surprising ourselves, because other people will surprise us. We will then surprise ourselves in turn. Like, I may have been completely calm and rational for the first 10 minutes of this live stream, then someone may say something in the chat and I just may lose my mind and go on a bender. Right, the joy of being with the other in everyday life and the reality founded on intersubjectivity are open to the risk of the unpredictable, hence of betrayal. Right, so when you're with other people, you're entering the world of intersubjectivity because you are affected by them. You do not speak and act in identical ways when you're with Luke as opposed to when you are with your boss. All right, Hannah Arendt coined the term the banality of evil in regard to Eichmann. She was factually incorrect. Eichmann wasn't someone in a bureaucratic cog. He was an active participant of you-know-what. Hannah Arendt likened Nazism to Stalinism, and she had a similar opinion about Zionism. We live in a society, guys. Okay. Very good. All right. So we'd rather live with other people because life without other people sucks. And we're finding that out in the pandemic, right? Think about how much we miss socializing, being with others. Like, I could really do with a good handshake right now. Really love to shake somebody's hand. You know, I'd even like to hug some people. I want to get quite social. Don't think I've shook hands in 6 weeks, more than 6 weeks. So I'm antsy. So if you enjoy being with other people, then you're moving from the realm of solipsism, self-absorption, to intersubjectivity, where who you are is affected by who you're talking to. Hi, Luke. Hope you're okay. Yes, I am well. Thank you. I'm doing really well. So we're not the same person when we're talking to our dad as opposed to when we're talking to our best friend, as opposed to when we're talking to our boss, or when we're talking to our most important client. We're affected by all the people in our life who matter to us, and the more they matter to us, the more we're affected. So you generally see with married men that they become to an extent gelded, that they have significantly changed themselves to maintain the most important relationships in their lives. That they may well indeed fear their wife. If a man fears his wife, it's because he puts so much value on her. And the more value you put on a relationship, the more you're going to be tempted to compromise who you are, to even sell yourself out, to maintain the smoothness of that relationship. Okay. Arendt stresses that this unpredictability refers not only to the other, but also to ourselves. No one can say what tomorrow will bring, nor how we will behave in the future. Yeah, so it's not just that other people are unpredictable, we are unpredictable, right? We're very different people when we have tooth pain, or back pain, or anxiety, or simply don't sleep well. I know if I don't sleep well, I'll often go through the next day with a headache. So all of Shabbos, all yesterday, I had this medium to mild headache, which significantly reduced my ability to read. Okay, sometimes you have to appease crazy where corporal punishment is not legal. Yeah, sometimes you have to appease crazy. That's true. But it's not just other people's craziness. It is everything that they are, that they bring to the table, is possible to affect us. And then we change, whether we have a headache, a toothache, a backache, we're in financial distress, we're in a hurry. We're going to behave very differently. When I'm in a hurry, then I cut out all distractions except my one goal of being on time. Uncertainty and unpredictability are a part of human action, no doubt about that. Not only thanks to the darkness of the human heart, but also because no action exists that is not conditioned by the actions of others, and that in turn conditions those actions. Wow, that's good. No action exists that is not in part shaped by the actions of other people. Nothing we do happens apart from the actions of others. Yeah. So nothing we do is not affected by the actions of other people. That's a really good insight. No man is an island, in other words. Uncertainty and unpredictability are a part of human action, not only thanks to the darkness of the human heart, because no action exists that is not conditioned by the actions of others, that in turn conditions those actions. So we're in a continual feedback mechanism. Okay, so someone in the chat is berating Hannah Arendt for being in a relationship with Martin Heidegger, because Martin Heidegger was an anti-Semite. That's why I don't find the term anti-Semite useful, because the person stating it is probably anti some group as well. But would that be a reflection of who he is? Let's say he's anti-Muslim. Would we say, oh, no one should talk to him, he's anti-Muslim? Or let's say he opposes open displays of homosexuality, and we say he's anti-gay. I just don't think terms like anti-Semite or anti-Muslim, Islamophobe or homophobe, just don't think they're useful. They certainly don't sum up the totality of someone. So Heidegger's reactions to Jews were not the sum total of who he was. He existed and had thoughts apart from his reactions to Jews. So you can say many things about Heidegger, and you can even say he's an anti-Semite, but I don't think that's the most accurate descriptor of the man. He was an important 20th century philosopher. I can swear to what I will be and what I will do tomorrow, but I will always have to take into account that I may change my project, My plans may be thrown off course or reshaped by the avoidable interference of actions by others. The joy of living with others can lead to both cooperation and betrayal. Yeah. Yeah. So we can swear when people get married, they swear to be faithful, right? And they anticipate that they usually believe that at the time. But then circumstances change. They have a few drinks, and the world looks very different. So we can swear to all sorts of things, and I think you know this. When you encounter people who swear something, it's usually a tip-off that they're unstable, because a deeper knowledge of the human heart predisposes us not to swear to as many things. And in the Jewish tradition, it's very negative about making an oath or swearing, because it's aware of the unpredictability of human relationships. So Judaism strongly discourages taking oaths and swearing to anything. This is the face of Joseph Conrad Razumov. He mistakenly believes that he can be the one and only master of his life and guide his future along a certain path, but just as soon as another person crosses that path, all definitions lose their clarity. The monotonous flow of Razumov's life is interrupted by the sudden appearance of Hadlin, a student revolutionary who takes refuge in Razumov's house after unsuccessfully attempting a politically motivated assassination. When Hadlin confides in Razumov, thus investing trust in him, all of Razumov's plans for leading a tranquil life and all his dreams of a career as a state functionary vanish. The eruption in his life of young Hadlin, a person almost unknown to him, obliges Razumov to make choices he never could have predicted. For him, honoring the revolutionary's expectations of trust by helping him to flee signifies betrayal of his own self and of his own dreams, embarking on a life course contrary to the one he had in mind. On the other hand, dishonoring an unsolicited trust by denouncing Hadlin to the police would mean committing a betrayal. To resolve this dilemma, Razumov is forced to redefine himself, his principles, and his values, and to reformulate his definition of betrayal. Yes, every time we encounter someone else, we may well be stimulated to redefine ourselves, our principles, what we stand for, our values, and our definitions of betrayal. For there to be betrayal, there must be a moral tie. And he has never established ties of any sort with Hadlin. Okay, so through this redefinition of himself and betrayal, Razumov arrives at a decision to turn this student revolutionary over to the police. But even though, according to Razumov's own definition, all a man can betray is his conscience, and he does not betray Hadlin, with whom he has no ties and to whom he has no commitment, his encounter with the young revolutionary will forever change his life. So every time we encounter someone, they have the potential to forever change our lives. During the course of Conrad's story, Razumov becomes a police informant in spite of himself. He will betray the trust that others place in him. He will play the betrayer's role precisely because one day Hadlin had chosen him as the person most worthy of his trust. Hadlin's ill-considered gesture of trust creates for Razumov a destiny as a betrayer. Hadlin's unpredictable gesture gives rise to an equally unpredictable destiny for Razumov. So, someone can come to you to whom you owe no obligations, and they may ask you to keep a trust, a confidence, and the very consideration of this trust, you thought you had no ties to this person, but suddenly being impaled on the horns of a dilemma can forever change you. All right, what's going on in the chat? Trotsky, it seems like there's a pattern of Jews who establish a cult-like following. Yes. So I'm sure you'll find that there's as a pattern of a certain personality type tends to create a cult-like following. This personality type may be higher in Jews than in non-Jews. I didn't know. So what would be the personality traits that lead one to create a cult-like following? So you probably make people feel a certain way, that you can answer their deepest needs. I'm not sure what personality type this would conform to. Yeah, charisma, intelligence, probably some extroversion. But I think cult leaders probably have certain personality traits. I think they're probably high in neuroticism. Okay, so list off in the chat. What are the personality traits of the effective cult leader? In the theory of social action based on intersubjectivity, such as Hannah Arendt. So intersubjectivity means that everything we do is conditioned, affected, stimulated by the actions of others. That we never act as an island. We always act in relationship to others, that we see ourselves in relationship to others. Each individual acts always and exclusively in relation to others and to their acts. This means that no one is ever just the doer, but is always also the one on whom others' actions are reflected. To do and to suffer are like opposite sides of the same coin, and the story that an act starts is composed of its consequent deeds and sufferings. So let's catch up with the chat here. They use neuroticism as a coping mechanism because they've developed schizoid tendencies from CPTSD. Charismatic, intelligent, honorable, brave, wise, decisive, organizing abilities, or the ability to pick a close acolyte to do it. Charles Manson, that's just who I was thinking about. There's a messianic aspect to it. We should all engage in live, high-minded sword fighting. IQ measures sociopathy. I came across Spinoza today. Blue Monday is the king of Bohemia. Luke knows he'll have me on eventually. Yeah, Blue Monday, send me an email, and glad to have you on. So I didn't know if I've unbanned people. It's just that I'm streaming on a different channel. So I got a hate speech strike on my main channel. So I switched over to this backup channel a few days ago. So that may be why some people are unbanned, or that some people are not moderators or are moderators that weren't on the other channel. Consequences of action are limitless because every act occurs in a medium and prompts a chain reaction that's putting a new process into motion. Yeah, that's good. So every action prompts a reaction. That's what Clausewitz said in his famous 19th century work on military strategy on war, that in war we always deal with an opponent who reacts. They're not passive, they're not simply recipients of our actions, but they always react to everything we do. No one is ever just the doer, but is always the one on whom others' actions are reflected. To do and to suffer are like opposite sides of the same coin, and the story that an act starts is composed of its consequent deeds and sufferings. So the consequences of action are limitless. We never know how we're going to affect other people, because every act occurs in a medium and prompts a chain reaction that's putting a new process into motion. According to Hannah Arendt, action affects other human beings who are capable of acting in their turn. Reactions to such acts are never simple responses, but rather new acts with their own reasons for being that affect others. Yeah, people don't just simply react blindly. So we act, then other people react, but they don't simply respond. They bring their own stuff to the party. Human beings are inevitably linked to one another. No act takes place in isolation without any effect on others. The smallest act in the most limited circumstances bears the seed of the same boundlessness, because one deed, sometimes one word, suffices to change every constellation. Yeah, that's a great thought. Every deed, every word has the potential to ricochet around the world. So I think that's referring to the concept of a butterfly flutters his wings in one part of the world, and the repercussions are felt in other parts of the world. So one word is enough to change people. So I was planning to go to Sacramento State to do my degree in economics, and then a couple of sentences from my friend's father. Have I ever read a book by Pat Buchanan? I like Pat Buchanan. I'm not sure if I've ever read a whole book by him, but I've read a lot of his columns. So a couple of sentences from my friend's dad said, no way, I'm not going to Sac State, and I ended up going to UCLA instead. I think that also may have been an impetus to me to get much more serious with my education. So sometime after that, I became essentially a straight A student. Being with others creates both the possibility of action and its risks. If no human being is ever totally isolated and no gesture or act is ever exclusively the work of one person, how can there be a subject who is intrinsically a betrayer, or a subject who is intrinsically the betrayed? Okay, there's a challenge, because we may very well come to define ourselves as someone who is betrayed. And the old Starbucks here completely shut down. There's no drive-through window for this Starbucks. Who can predict betrayal? And we can't. In Shakespeare's play of the same name, Coriolanus refuses to observe the rules and the rights of the Roman Republic by seeking the favor of the Roman people through its tribunes, and his refusal is repaid by insults. This is enough to make the great general feel that he has been betrayed, so that induces him to betray Rome. Abandon Rome, which he no longer feels himself appreciated. Rome, for which he has so often and so generously fought, is no longer his homeland. How could Coriolanus have predicted in the happy days of his glory, when he defended Rome from its enemies, that one day he would betray Rome? How could he have imagined that it would be precisely other Romans who would bring him around to that betrayal, or that he would be the one to pass over to the side of the enemy? So yeah, we may feel a great deal of loyalty to a group, to an entity, to a job, to a person, in just a few sentences or one single act. And we may well feel compelled to ditch our loyalty, and in fact compelled to betray. So often those who are the keenest fans are the most dangerous for, say, the public personality. That I've known it, that I've had, over-the-top fans. Whenever I hear from like an over-the-top fan, I immediately become worried, because I have found that people who are like over-the-top in their fandom are the most likely to turn and switch, and to become the bitterest of enemies and opponents. So you'll often do a kindness for someone, and then suddenly they become irate because you didn't do a second kindness. So I gave a friend a credit card. Like, I was responsible for it. He didn't have good credit, so I wanted to help him out. He'd help me out in various ways. Hadn't stayed at his place, but I'd used his shower at times, and he'd been a good friend to me, so I thought, yeah, I'll give him a credit card in his name that I'm responsible for, and he'll just pay me every month. Well, he didn't pay me, and ended up with he owed me about $800. And at that point, because he was late in paying me, I just cut him off. Then once I cut him off, he essentially ceased to be my friend, and he never repaid me the money. So this wouldn't have happened if I hadn't extended myself to do that kindness of giving him a credit card. And then, because he was just, that's who he was, is to be habitually late in paying his bills. That's why he didn't have access to credit. Then he'd be habitually late repaying me to pay the credit card bills he'd run up. And then when I finally cut him off, then he experienced that as a tremendous act of betrayal. And that pretty much was the end of our friendship. It kind of petered on after that, but we were never as close. And now I haven't spoken to him I don't think I've had any communication with him in maybe 8-10 years. And we were like the best of friends during my first few years in Los Angeles. So this happened in late 97, early 1998. And we stayed acquaintances for another decade. Or when I was staying with that college professor at UCLA, and he asked me if he could give me a blowjob, our friendship was never the same after that. Thinking about a girlfriend I had whose uncle, while intoxicated, asked her for a blowjob, and she realized that her relationship with her uncle was never the same after that. So one word, one sentence, one act has the potential to forever change our relationship to not just one person, but then to a whole string of people. Talk to you more soon.